Cleopatra VII, Theophilipiter, arguably one of the most iconic women in human history, is notorious for her beauty and love affairs. For over 2,000 years, she has been portrayed as an evil and immoral monarch who destroyed two of the greatest Roman generals. However, there is much more to her than what her reputation is today. She was an extremely intelligent, powerful, and ambitious monarch who used a combination of her natural charm and wit to achieve gold for herself and her empire. This is the story of the infamous queen and the last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC to Ptolemy I Soter and Cleopatra V Tryphena. She was the second oldest of 5 siblings, with one older sister, 2 younger brothers, and 1 younger sister. However, her family's prominence began long before the reign of her father. She was the descendant of one of Alexander the Great's best generals, Ptolemy I Soter. It is a common misconception that her family is ethnically Egyptian, but due to Alexander's conquest of Egypt, they were actually Macedonian Greeks who ruled over the Egyptian empire. From a young age, Cleopatra was a curious child who studied philosophy and language. She was fluent in 7 languages and was the first and only Ptolemaic ruler to speak the Egyptian language. Because of the competitive family dynamics of ruling families at the time, she felt that she needed to be educated on how to become the best possible ruler for when she finally came to power. Her drive, ambition, and intelligence made her well-spoken and charming, important traits for a future monarch. She was seen as an incredibly attractive, mostly due to her behavior and wit, and less because of her physical appearance. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, ruled Egypt from 80 BC to 58 BC. He was exiled from Egypt, and Cleopatra's older sister, Bernice IV, took power. However, when her father returned, he mercilessly executed Bernice and returned to the throne, dying years later. This chaos highlights the competition and intensity within royal families for power. Cleopatra and her siblings were constantly on edge, risking losing their power or even their lives for the slightest misstep. The fight for the throne was ruthless, chaotic, and a lifelong battle for the group. After her father's death when she was 18, she married her younger brother, Ptolemy VIII, and ruled together as co-regents. She married him for the sake of upholding the Ptolemaic tradition of having both a male and female ruler on the throne at the same time. The 2 siblings and the cohabitants were referred to as gods. However, she took advantage of their 8-year age gap and disregarded her brother's claim of co-regent, ruling independently for 3 years. Ptolemy's advisors began to plot against her and eventually had her exiled to Syria in 48 BC. Cleopatra smuggled herself into Julius Caesar's quarters in hopes of political assistance, and by using her charm, they not only became allies, but lovers as well. She later had a son with him named Ptolemy XV Caesar. This was a great moment for Cleopatra since her baby symbolized that Egypt and Rome were united. However, her sister Erigone did not like the fact that she was gaining so much power. She acted alongside her brother in ritual and public display. Erigone tried to take over since she believed she was the rightful ruler of Egypt. During the Alexandrian War, Erigone attempted to lead the native forces against Cleopatra, who had allied herself with Julius Caesar. With the help of Julius Caesar, she was soon sent to the temple of Artemis at Ephesus in Roman Anatolia. Cleopatra's husband, also her brother, fell off a boat and drowned. Due to his death, Cleopatra had to marry her other brother, Ptolemy XIV. He was supposedly ended up passing away to a disease, but some say she poisoned her brother so she could gain more power. The Roman Senate did not like Cleopatra. In Rome, women weren't allowed to talk about politics and were expected to stay at home as a mother. Since Cleopatra and Julius Caesar were involved, the Roman political leaders assassinated Caesar by stabbing him to death because they believed he was gaining too much popularity and arrogance. The death of the love of her life devastated her, but she had to think of her country. She realized that she needed to have an alliance with Rome or else Egypt would become the property of Rome. Cleopatra was summoned to Paris by Mark Antony. Legend says that Cleopatra was rolled up in a carpet and asked to be delivered to Mark Antony. The two talked, and Cleopatra saw it as an opportunity to gain power over both Egypt and Rome. an agreement that Antony found her support and money-wise was much needed in his campaign. They ended up getting a little intimate with one another, and next thing you know, they got married and had 3 children together. To her, he was not only a power source, but also her romantic partner. While the 2 lovebirds have their honeymoon, Octavian, a Roman general, despised her because she was a threat to his rule of the empire. He started to spread propaganda to make everyone, including Cleopatra's allies, turn against her. He convinced the Roman Senate to declare war on Egyptian queen. Cleopatra attempts to create a deal with Octavian as her newlywed husband is feeling weak and depressed. Octavian offers a deal where she has to kill her beloved husband and her family will stay safe. Obviously, she refuses, which leads to a war. She sends her children away to try to keep them safe from Octavian. Eventually found out by Octavian's forces were coming, so she decided to hide in her tomb and burn everything. This was to make sure Octavian won't be able to take any of her treasure. She sent a letter to Mark Antony. Octavian captured Cleopatra and 2 of her handmaidens. He took them to Rome with the hopes of humiliating Cleopatra in front of the people. Unfortunately for Octavian's plans, Cleopatra commits suicide alongside her 2 handmaidens in the tomb. No one knows how they really died, but most people think she allowed herself to be bit by snakes, and snakes were a symbol of power at the time. Others say all 3 of them drank poison from a snake that Cleopatra had kept since she studied medicine for a long period of time. After Cleopatra's death, Octavian looted her palace and executed Caesarion, who would have been the next ruler of Egypt. The items that Octavian achieved from her palace provided enough funds to pay for his army, which returned back to Rome. He became the first emperor of Rome and changed his name to Augustus. Egypt ended up becoming a province of the Roman Empire, and it was under the direct control of the governor, who was selected by Augustus himself. Egypt became Roman Egypt and marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty.